Hey Williams Creek students, happy Tuesday. We are back this week with another video, hopefully to encourage you guys in your walk with the Lord and just dig into some things that we can practically be doing as Christians to better live out our faith. Now, this past Sunday, Pastor David started a series called Be Real, talking through the book of 1 John and talking about how we can be real and authentic in our faith. And I kind of wanted to build on that a little bit, talking about how we can imitate others the right way. Like, imitation is a big thing in our culture today. We have social media influencers, we have actors and actresses, we have pop stars, and we have all sorts of people that we look to. And ultimately, they influence us, right? Ultimately, we make decisions because we want to imitate those around us who are in positions of power, who seem to have it going for them. Even sports athletes, right? We want to be imitators of them. I remember growing up, I played basketball in my front yard, and the best shooters in the NBA or in the NCAA, I would imitate them because I wanted to be like them. And I think we do the same thing on a daily basis. So as Christians, we need to be thinking about how we can properly imitate others around us, not imitating those that are not walking with the Lord, but instead imitating those who are walking with the Lord to better live out our faith. Now, I do want to say, just because someone isn't walking with the Lord doesn't mean that they don't have attributes that aren't worth imitating, right? It's not necessarily sinful to imitate attributes for someone who isn't walking with the Lord, but we do have to be careful, right? We do have to be careful because we don't want to be imitating non-believers in ways that ultimately pull us away from God or falsely misrepresent God. We want to be imitating the best traits about God. So I want to talk about a few of those today. Now, there's two specific verses that I wanted to bring to mind that I feel like highlight this idea of imitating. Number one is Ephesians 5:1. It says, "Therefore be imitators of God as beloved children." Now, when we think about being an imitator of God, that can seem like a daunting task, except for the fact that we think about when we think about Jesus, right? God sent Jesus into the world who's both man and God. And so we have in Jesus the perfect representation of what it looks like to imitate God in human flesh. And so if we ever want to understand how we can better imitate God, just look at Jesus, read the Gospels, imitate everything that he is doing, and strive to live the way that he lived. The second text I wanted to look at is 1 Corinthians 11:1. Paul wrote this and he says, "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ." Right, so the first person we want to obviously imitate is Jesus himself, is God himself. That's the model standard that we want to look at. But Paul says, as Christians, we should be able to look at one another and be able to imitate one another, and ultimately that imitates Christ, right? So Paul is talking to the church in Corinth, and he says, "Look to me because I'm striving to imitate Christ," right? I'm striving to imitate Christ. And so I think it's also helpful for us to be able to say, okay, I'm going to look around at other Christians and imitate the ways that they are best living out Christ and strive to do that on my own. Now, there's three categories that I wanted to briefly talk about of ways we can do this, right? Speech, actions, and walk with God. Speech, actions, and walk with God. Now, as it relates to speech, actions, and walk with God, I think there's a few questions that we can hopefully ask of those that we're looking at, right, to ourselves to help us to understand how we should be imitating those people. So as we think about speech, maybe some good questions to ask are, what sort of words do they use? How do they talk with other people? As we think about actions, what sort of things do they do or not do? How do they place other people before themselves? Are they selfish or selfless? And then lastly, as we talk about walk with God, do they regularly set aside time to spend with God? Would you say that their faith is evident in their life? I think these are all important questions to think about as we look towards others and say, I want to imitate that person because they imitate Christ well. Think through those questions, ask them to yourself, and think, are these questions being answered in that individual? And it's not always going to be perfectly done, right? As sinful people, right? Paul was a sinful person. I'm a sinful person. Your parents are sinful people. Pastor David was a sinful person, right? We're not going to do all of these things perfectly, but you want to find people who at least strive to do them well, and you see evidence of them lived out well in their life. So think about those three things, right? Talk and speech, actions, and walk with God. And strive to find people in your life that you can look to and say, they set a good example of what it means to be a Christian. They set a good example of what it means to be a follower of God. And remember, the golden standard that we can always go back to is Jesus, right? And his life is literally recorded in the Bible. So all we got to do is go to the Gospels, see how he interacts with people, see how he talks with other people, right? See how he spends time with God, and strive to live that out. Anyways, I hope this was an encouragement to you all today. If you have any questions, let me know. And I'm praying for you all, and I'm striving to walk alongside God just as you are. So let's do it together. All right, talk to you later.